Tariffs are always bad, but these tariffs will end up, when it's all over said and done, to be less bad than people fear, which is bullish for markets.
Yeah, but I don't take any direct answer from you, Mr. Fisher. Is America now better after this 100 days with this administration or no?
So far, no. In terms of the economy, first, you know that the president has criticized Powell and wanted Powell to cut rates. That's the surest way to get Powell to not cut rates. The president would have done better not to say anything. So the dollar is weak in the short term because of the fear of the U.S. destroying its global position in the world with the governments that I mentioned earlier.
I want to know, when you start, how you become a big investor, and if you can tell me the first million you made, since when, and how you do it, and which sector.
They say that I'm worth a little over 11.25 billion US.
Cool. What do you think about this currency, this crypto? Especially, it's taking more support from the new administration in White House. How do you think this can be change the Saudi economy, especially in the world vision? Well, let's start from welcoming you, Mr. Fisher, in Saudi Arabia and in our newspaper, الاقتصادية, and also specifically in podcast Hallala. I'm glad you give us this time with such big investors like you, sir. I will start from what's your reason for visiting Saudi Arabia? Are you here for a specific dealing or a new investment?
So simply, I come to the kingdom every year, and we've had institutional clients here for 15 years, in mostly Riyadh, but also elsewhere. And we have a regional headquarters here, and then we call on more entities trying to create new deals, and we're doing all of that in this trip. So I see the kingdom as a growing opportunity for partnership between my firm and different parts of the kingdom, and that's why I'm here.
All right, you are welcome, sir. All right, I will start also from international wise. I mean, I know you write articles and you're doing so many interviews, and you have a long time experience regarding to the economy and the capital market and all the. Now today we just crossed 100 days from Trump time in the White House. I will go directly. Do you think that 100 days, I mean, the America and the economy in America better before this 100 days or after this 100 days?
So Trump has been very successful on some things and failed on others. And I think 100 days is less significant than most people. It's an arbitrary line in the sand. But said simply, he was elected mostly to do two things. One, because of concern about the illegal immigration coming across from Mexico, and two, to do well with the economy. He's done very, very well with the immigration issue. On the economy, he's done well on trying to use executive orders to streamline and reduce regulation, which is consistent with what he said. His tariff policies have been excessive, more than people expected, crafted strangely, and won't be effective, and will all mostly, not completely, end up being removed. Tariffs are always bad, but these tariffs will end up, when it's all over said and done, to be less bad than people fear, which is bullish for markets.
Yeah, but I don't take any direct answer from you, Mr. Fisher. Is America now better after this 100 days with this administration or no?
So far, no. In terms of the economy.
All right. In this conflict between United States and bigger company like China, like India, like Europe, where do you think this conflict going to be at the end?
So when all is said and done, what the president is trying to accomplish cannot really be accomplished. You really can't rip the roots out of the global economy. Comparative advantage and specialization of labor always end up prevailing over artificial government barriers, one way or the other. I believe what will happen with all of this is that the president is being reined in by forces put upon him that people don't fully understand, that come from the United States Congress fear of what will happen with the midterm elections in 2026 and losing both chambers of Congress, which would be disastrous not only for the country, but for the president. And the president's coming to realize that, and most of this tariff process will be reversed. The other point that I will make is that the system that the United States government has for collecting tariffs does not have the infrastructure or the capacity to process these tariffs. It wasn't created to do this. The inadequate capacity means that the actual tariffs that will be collected when you go through the way it actually works will be a small fraction of what it is that the sticker price on the tariffs is, which means that it will be much less significant. China will figure that out. You mentioned India. India will figure that out. But in the end, and I believe within the time frame of the 90 days that the president's talked about, you'll see most of this being backtracked.
And how does this tariff affect the whole economic world? I mean, regarding to the evaluation, regarding to the relation between countries, and also the role of WTO in the world now?
So break that down into two sub-pieces. The one is the sub-piece of governments and how governments get along.
Yeah.
And the other is how people and commerce get along.
And companies also.
Companies is part of commerce.
Yeah.
So when we think about that, if you just think about it in the commerce and companies, you can see a really clear pattern that most people don't recognize as such. All of the places that the president has attacked are doing better in the stock market this year than America is, and by a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Mexico, China, on and on. Europe, Germany, heavy industrial producer, exporter, where the tariffs would impact, up double digits, while America's down significantly. The stock market's telling you something. The irony of the places that the president attacks doing better than the places that he doesn't attack, and America itself, is a statement that what he's doing isn't working.
Yeah. Also, we start seeing kind of conflict between President Trump and Mr. Powell, the Federals. Where do you think this conflict gonna be ended, or how it's gonna be solved? Especially, the relationship between them affect all the world.
So, of course, in the kingdom, because of the peg to the dollar, it's particularly important. And yet, when you think about what's gone on, first, you know that the president has criticized Powell and wanted Powell to cut rates. That's the surest way to get Powell to not cut rates. The president would have done better not to say anything. The most important thing to the central bank, the Federal Reserve, is its independence. And therefore, to appear to respond to what the president has asked for, the entire board of governors of the Federal Reserve will be hostile to. And in that, you're not going to see the Fed moving short-term rates. There's not much reason for long-term rates to move. I could go into that if you want. So between now and next May, when the president gets to appoint the next head of the Federal Reserve, there should be relative stability.
And how's
with a lot of chatter.
Yeah. And how does this affect the dollar, the value of the dollar index?
So the dollar is weak in the short term because of the fear of the U.S. destroying its global position in the world with the governments that I mentioned earlier, the government-to-government relationship. But I will tell you, which most people don't think through, that if you just go onto some device like this and go to a financial site that has currencies and do a very long-term chart of major developed nation to major developed nation, you get irregular sine waves that over the last 35 years end up going nowhere at all. And so in the short term, the dollar is weak. But in the longer term, I think that sine wave going back to nowhere at all against the euro, against pound sterling, against the yen, all of the major economies, that will continue.
And how you comment about the big investor, they lose a lot of money regarding to the Trump action and movement. How you comment on that? Billions, it's gone.
So if you're referring to the stock market,
Yes.
billions.
Yeah.
Well, markets are volatile, and they've always been volatile. I'll make a point which is very simple. If you take the market from before the peak in the market in the third week of February through today, the pattern of that market, if you overlay it on the major correction, but not bear market, that occurred in 1998, they're almost perfect images of each other, almost perfectly so. You should put that in the paper as a visual so they can see. Now, this is very different than 1998, but the market action is very normal. This kind of volatility, stocks are just volatile. If people may not remember, and particularly your younger viewers, but 1998 was a 26% positive year in the market that had a correction within it that was down 19%. Before you got to the end that was up 26%.
Yeah, and what's the only one advice from you to the global investor in the stock market, how they deal with the situation now happening since the new administration coming in the office and what's happening in the last 100 days?
This is a correction inside an ongoing bull market. Patience is your friend. Value, industrial, consumer discretionary type stocks will continue to lead through the next phase of the bull market. Growth-oriented and tech-type stocks will lag, and people should avail themselves of the fact that the Trump terrifying imposition period will fade away as we move to the back of the year in a way that people have a hard time anticipating and feeling now. When fear is excessive, that's always bullish. Fear of a false factor is bullish. Excessive fear is bullish. This will be followed by better times.
Yeah, but what's Kim Fisher philosophy and certain this time? How you deal by yourself with your investment this time?
Heavy orientation in value-oriented companies, cheaper ones, in the less expensive ones, in the basic industrial areas, in the consumer discretionary areas, in the parts of the world that are making things, and the parts of the world that are where most people think will be bad times ahead because of what the president's doing.
Yeah, if you allow me, Mr. Fisher, I will go back also to the Saudi market.
Sure.
How you see the Saudi market, the capital of the Saudi market, and do you have any invest in it?
So, first, yes, but the way to think about
yes,
that...
Yes, for what?
Yes, we have investment in
All
it.
right.
But the way to think about that is, and you know this and your viewers know this, the kingdom is heavily impacted by whatever happens to the price of oil. That's not a surprise. The price of oil this year is not strong. Last night, the WTI broke down below 60 US. But you know that. The fact in that is that's an impediment to the markets here. It's an impediment to the economy because the retail sector that's so big in the kingdom and services in general do react to the 40% that's petroleum. And in that, all of that's negatively impacted. On the other hand, the way you should think about a portfolio always is here's the things that will do really well. I think I want to own a bunch of that. But then I also want to own a little bit about what would do well if the things that I think will do well actually don't. And that actually is the kingdom.
All right. And if you allowed me, Mr. Fisher, I would like to have like a kind of a personal question, if you allowed me. I want to know when you start, how you become a big investor, and if you can tell me the first million you made, since when and how you do it and which sector?
So when I was very young, I was a semiconductor analyst.
I see.
And I started off doing things in technology. And then in the period of 1978 and 1979, a long time ago because I'm an old guy, I saw an opportunity in broken down technology companies that would turn around. And that first money was made doing that. Technology companies that have been doing well, heavily based in core technologies, which is making the technology, broken down, but then fixing themselves and buying them when they were cheap. That was the beginning. But then after that, I started broadening out to more and more different kinds of things.
And also another personal question. May I know how much your wealth now after the whole more than 25 or 35 years of investment?
So I don't really know. I know what others say I'm worth, because an awful lot of my worth is the value of the firm. And so the Forbes, which calculates rich people, says I'm worth a little over 11 billion.
And that form, how much value now in the market?
They say that I'm worth a little over 11.25 billion US. And Bloomberg, that also does a similar thing, says I'm worth a little over 12 billion US.
All right.
What am I really worth? I don't know, and it's not very important to me, because when you get right down to it, I'm just doing what I do, and I've got more than I'd ever need anyway.
All right, cool. My last question about the crypto and gold. What do you think about the gold in this situation now? It's crossing 3,500 for one, and that's almost more. Just 2 years ago was less than 2,000. Where's the price of the gold going to?
So I don't know the answer to that, and I'll tell you a story. When I was young, I made so many incorrect predictions about gold that I made a solemn vow that I would never, ever have a forecast about gold again, ever the rest of my life, in the name of good luck. And I've had good luck ever since, so I see no reason to give that up. Mm-hmm. The fact is, in history, going back over the long term, gold gets about 85% of its return from about 15% of the time, and the other 85% of the time, it gets no return at all. It goes very long periods of time with no return, then suddenly, or a negative return, and then suddenly a big burst, which is what we're in.
So you don't think there will be a correction in the prices?
I don't know that. I don't make predictions about the price of gold. But I will tell you that a major impetus behind what's going on with gold right now is fear of everything that's going on, where people think that Donald Trump is disrupting the global order that was created after World War II.
Okay.
And I don't actually think that'll happen. So therefore, I'm not optimistic on that thesis. Crypto is a whole different thing. And crypto is a much longer story.
Regarding the crypto, are you investing in crypto or
no?
Okay, cool. What do you think about this currency, this crypto? Especially, it's taking more support from the new administration in White House, kind of. What's the future of this kind of market?
So first, intuitively, everyone knows crypto is very volatile. Anything that's very volatile isn't really a currency. Money has to be fairly stable value. That's why the kingdom pegs to the dollar, because it's relatively stable over time. On the other hand, when we think of crypto, on the one hand, we have Bitcoin, and on the other hand, we have everything else. Now, Bitcoin has a limited potential supply of new coin, and we're approaching the max capacity now. The rest of crypto has unlimited potential capacity to increase new supply. The notion that anything that can have infinite capacity to increase new supply should do very well in price speaks instead to volatility, where whenever the price gets high, new supply gets created, bringing the price down. I don't think that works very well in the long term. And of course, the regulatory portion, if I can continue.
Yeah, please.
This administration in the United States will try to allow regulation so crypto becomes more available. But the more that happens, the more new supply gets created also. Secondarily, not every country, that's wrong, but major countries around the world are trying to become crypto capitals, so they'll all be competing against each other. And all of that, in my mind, speaks to, in the long term, whatever supply is there will be matched, whatever demand is there, will be matched with supply. And the price will be volatile, but not overall very positive.
I'm sure you read about the Saudi Vision 2030.
Of course.
And the main giga project. And we have a new industry like tourism, like entertainment, like technology, like AI. Now we have a big fund, BIF, invest in a new like AI, even so many different industry than what we was invest in. How do you think this can be change the Saudi economy, especially in the world vision?
So first, Saudi has a natural strength and advantage on that which will be associated with AI.
Yeah.
That should be obvious. The fact of the energy requirements to pull this off successfully allow the data centers to be functioned here as opposed to many other places in the world, simply because of...
They start doing that.
Yes, and that'll continue. A big part of the 2030 vision has been that which tries to pull recreational and tourist business into the kingdom. And the nature of that business is, as these projects get completed, they will pull in business. That will work. But that's also a business that lots of other countries are trying to compete for.
Right.
And in that, how do I say, there's an analogy to restaurants. When a restaurant's new, everybody wants to go try it.
Yeah.
When when the restaurant gets old, they've tried it and they either come back because they like it, or they didn't like it and they go to the next new place. So some of these big investments will see their peak utilization maybe 7 years after they're completed. And then after that, it'll slow down some, but I think they're all valid.
Well, our interview has ended. I'm glad to give us, I'm really appreciating you giving us this kind of good interview. Thank you, Mr. Ken Fishar, to having me in Podcast Helleleh Weekend.
Thank you for having me, Mohammed. It's a pleasure to be with you. You're always fun.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Welcome.